Jamie Redknapp after the game said something I thought was really interesting. He said that he reckons at the moment Saka is actually a problem for Gyokeres scoring goals. Do you agree? Do you think there's a certain level of maybe, like, I don't quite know how he was approaching that, but effectively Redknapp said that Saka, the way Saka plays football, hinders Gyokeres' chance of actually scoring goals.
It's easy to understand that because we've had the same thing with Salah and Isak, where Saka and Salah are both masters at cutting in and going that route. But for an out-and-out number 9, he needs Saka going to the byline and cutting it back. He doesn't necessarily... If he's in position, he's on the last man, he's got his hand on the defender, and he sees Saka cut in, there's not really much Gyokeres can do with that angle of the body that Saka is kind of showing you. I mean, we've had it with Salah, right? He'll cut in, and Isak kind of goes, where do I fit in here? Yeah, you can play that kind of in-swinging cross, but I think Saka 9 times out of 10 will either look to shoot or almost lay it off to an Odegaard who might be on the edge of the box. And by that time, you've even hindered Gyokeres even more because it's coming central. Right. He needs it out wide to come back in.
Exactly.
And I understand the logic in it. I think there's definitely something to be said on the training ground. If Isak or if Gyokeres speaks to Salah or Saka respectively and says, look, when you get in that position, where do you want, like as a striker, as a number 9, if you're cutting in, like where should I go? Like, should I look for a rebound off the keeper, which obviously, last night worked? Or do I make an angle where you can chip a ball in? I mean, he kind of wants the left-footed cross coming from the left side, not the right side. Yeah. So I understand the logic in that, and we're suffering with that ourselves. But this can be fixed in training. If you make the right runs, if you do maybe a reverse pass, if Gyokeres, if he uses Saka cutting in as almost the trigger to run across the line and go for that reverse pass, then that's there. But I do understand the logic of a number 9, an out-and-out number 9, being frustrated by their winger cutting in instead of going outside and then coming back.
I would agree. I mean, there are a couple of things in that question that you raised there that I actually made that point previously about when people were giving Gyokeres mad, what I call over-the-top stick. I was saying that we haven't found the best way of you. You would have heard me say that many times.
Yeah.
We're not playing to his strengths. And that was one of the things I was talking about, him not getting that early ball. It was very interesting that when Gyokeres scored yesterday, I don't know if you saw the post-match interviews, him and Ben White. Now, those two have played together at Brighton. And
actually, it was Ben White who was vocally unhappy with how you played in the second half, now that I think about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But
see if I can find the quote.
Gyokeres actually said something in that. I don't know if he said it advisedly or whether it was just off the cuff.
Yeah.
But he said, as soon as I saw Ben White in there, I knew he was going to try and find me. Now, to me, that was quite intuitive because what he's saying, he knew he could rely on that ball. He made the run and he was able to score. As Alex said, sometimes with the likes of Saka and Salah and people like that, because they're left-footed, they're looking to cut back and shoot, or even if they do cross, you're not getting the ball at the right angle that you would want to exploit.
Yeah.
So there is something, as Alex quite rightly says, definitely something that could work.
Yeah, so Ben White in that interview said, we didn't play very well in the second half. Let them give us more pressure. That's how we conceded the goals, not up to our standards really, so it's a bit disappointing.
It was a bit disappointing because at 3-1, like I said, I thought, I'll take 3-1. But then we had a really good opportunity, or 2 good opportunities after that to pretty much finish it off. But hey, it is what it is.
Who's in this situation then? So obviously left wing at Arsenal is a topic in itself. It's a conversation in itself, right? Who should be starting left wing? Is it Eze, Trossard, Martinelli? Should you be signing someone? Should you have gone and got Semenyo, for example, earlier in January over Man City? That's a conversation in itself. But then if the Saka-Gyokeres dynamic isn't working, as you say, Alex, it's something you work on in training. But to work on in training, I feel like one player has to give something. Who gives that? Because Saka, we know how good he is when he's on form and he cuts in.
It's a great question, and I'm assuming it's one that they would have brought up at some point, even though internally they might not want to admit that there's a problem or there's a lack of service. They just keep doing what they're doing. We're winning games, so don't fix it if it's not broken. But look, do you want the output of, let's use Salah for an example, right? Because the numbers that he's put up in that position. Would you want Salah cutting in more often than not and him taking away 28 to 29 to 30 goals a season? Or do you want to, I wouldn't use the word hamper because Mo Salah still gets you 20 assists a season. And that's why, yes, of course, Saka's great, but Salah there's levels, right? In terms of 30 goals, 20 assists last season, he did everything. He set up goals and scored. So there is a way of having that balance of both. But I think when you look at the outputs, football's a numbers game. When you look at the outputs, you go, do we sacrifice 10 goals for Saka, who is, we've just signed him on a new deal, he's probably the captain in a year or two, for an extra 10 Gyokeres goals? Or will those 15 to 20 Gyokeres goals be tap-ins, deflections? It's very rare that you'll see Saka assisting Gyokeres with a header, for example, or a through ball that breaks the lines. It will be Saka wanting to finish that move off himself. So what do you sacrifice? Do you say to Gyokeres, look, that's just the way it is, mate, find a way? We're not changing. Saka gets us 20 goals. We're not changing that. So you need to work with him. But then is Saka that bothered that Gyokeres isn't scoring 2025 because he's outshining Gyokeres? Do you understand?
Yeah, I mean, this is it, because a lot of
Would
people
you
have
give
said
up?
that Saka's numbers this season, he's underperforming to what he performed previously.
For sure.
So that might explain that when he's through on goal, he might fancy a shot rather than pass it, because he's thinking,
I think with speaking about what Alex is saying, I do think it's got to be Saka who gives something, because ultimately at the end of the day, if you're a winger, you're in a better position to create for a striker than create a shot yourself. Because if you want to go off like the best positions to score, and obviously the closer to goal you get, the easier it is to score a goal. It's easier for a winger to create that opportunity for a striker than try and do it yourself, because 9 times out of 10 you won't score that cut in and shoot. I feel like it has to be Saka in that scenario, or I don't know if it becomes trying Saka on the left instead. I'm not sure, because then that
you know what the answer is to it is fairly obvious thing to say, but it's harder in real life. Is the balance. You want the right balance, don't you? Because if you try and do the same thing every time, then the defenders are going to read that. So his decision making has to be to the point where, do I pass? Do I shoot? Which is the best option for the team? Because there are going to be some times when it will open up and you'll think, you know what, I fancy myself here.
Yeah.
Or he might take it down the line, beat the defender and look up, try and find where Gyokeres is and play
Out
the
of
pass.
10 times that he gets in that position, how many out of 10 times does he beat the man, look up and fire it across to Gyokeres? How many times would you say? You've watched him more than me this season.
What I would say in answer to that, obviously I don't have the stats in front of me, it's not enough.
Yeah.
Because
One or two.
Dylan will attest to this. I've said it many times before, even though Gyokeres has not, let's be honest, put up the numbers or the types of performances that I would have liked to have seen, I've maintained right from the very start that we're not playing to his best attributes. And until we do that, we're not going to get the best out of him.
Yeah, it could just be a connection thing as well. Like maybe obviously because he said because both of them are underperforming. Both of them are. Yeah. Saka's nowhere near as good as he was 18 months ago. That could just be down to a long dip in form. But then as well, it's something that I think about this so much, about what you said a few months ago about Arsenal always playing better with a number 9. Do you think there's a thing of, if Gyokeres say Kai Havertz, he's coming back right now, he's played a couple games off the bench, he'll probably start as the season goes on, maybe in the Champions League games, the rest of the league games, or some easy, quote unquote, easier round of 16 ties, for example.
Less challenging.
Yeah, less challenging. That's a good way of putting it. But could there be a thing where, let's say Kai Havertz comes back, because when Kai Havertz was playing was also when Saka was at his best, right? That might just be a coincidence, or that might be because the two of them work really well together. What if Kai Havertz was to come back, play well after Gyokeres is on the bench? Maybe that would mean that Gyokeres just isn't the profile you should have bought.
Yeah.
No, I think he is a profile we should have bought, because you do.
But it's not.
Do need
It's
a
just
number 9.
not working
even as an
at the
option.
moment.
No, but even as an option, you need a number 9, man.
Not as your main.
But
output,
there's having
though.
a number 9 as an option, buying a £25 million number 9, like maybe going and get, say, obviously this season, Strand Larson got 13, 14 Prem goals last season as a rotationary option, then continuing
Not
with the
your main
normally
man.
false 9 stuff. But then you bought Gyokeres to start 35 out of 38 league games and score 15 to 20 league goals.
I do think you have to be kind of patient with the project. What I would say about Havertz, and this applies for Jesus as well, who's also going to be up for consideration for that number 9 spot, is that until the arrival of Gyokeres, none of those guys are what I call prolific goal scorers.
None of them nailed it down before he came, which allowed you to go and think,
so that's why
this is the solution.
That's why I was such a keen advocate, and that is why, and I'll say this again, I've said it before, that when the whole Sesko-Gyokeres debate was ongoing, I always nailed my colours to the Gyokeres mask. I said, look, we need a guy that's a proven goal scorer. With Sesko, you're looking at a guy that's got great potential, great athleticism. I don't deny that.
Yeah.
But if you look at the numbers he's posted over the years, he's never been prolific. At least with Gyokeres, you could see a paper trail of 30 plus goals for how many assists. So you think, right, that's who we want.
I'm just going back to what Laurie said on the balance, right? And it's so important because if you've got your three up top, you want them all to be chipping in. You don't want anyone to fall behind. I know it's Liverpool, but in 2017-18, when we talk about balance, this was, in my opinion, the most balanced front three I'd ever seen. Mo Salah gets you 44 goals, 15 assists. Firmino gets 27 goals in all comps, 11 assists.
I find it mad.
And Sadio Mane gets 20 goals and 10 assists. In terms of spreading it out, 135 goals Liverpool scored that season.
Well, Klopp mentioned it the other day, didn't he? About he was like Salah and Mane were never
Bobby
like
was
good
the-
friends, but Bobby was the one.
yeah.
He quite literally in the middle of
Puts them together.
And I remember when Firmino was first playing in that role, and he just wasn't scoring a goal, and it was the best defensive striker on the planet. I can't even remember him back in 27 in a
goals
season.
in
I
all
didn't even
comps,
realise
bro.
that's how many he scored.
Unbelievable.
That was the
10 of those were in the Champions
was
League.
that Salah's first season?
Salah's debut season.
Salah's debut season, yeah, when he won the
44
Golden Boot.
44
That is,
goals.
I didn't realise just how many goals Firmino had got that
that
season.
is quite a
I
That's
mean,
a
Mane
mental
gets
stat.
20. And
Yeah.
you're going, oh, it's not as good as Firmino, mate, or Salah. Half of what Salah got, but you're still going.
But that
20
that
goals.
also has something to do with just the whole general style of the way you guys played.
And that's why
attack-minded.
That's
We
why
don't
when you
really play
mention
like
the
that.
word balance, I'm
Yeah.
trying to rack Messi, Neymar, Suarez was insane, but in terms of like all three of them putting up numbers like that, it was for Liverpool. That was the most balanced front line I've ever seen in Liverpool's history.
When
probably.
you want goal scoring wingers, you want a striker who comes back. Like you want like a centre forward, like a Benzema type, or like Firmino that season. You don't want someone like Gyokeres.
Yeah.
And this is not to say that Gyokeres maybe won't become a good player second half of the season or next season once he feels more settled. But it does I just found Jamie Redknapp's comments so interesting because it was true.
And that front three gets you to 3 Champions League finals in 5 years.
Yeah. That was a good front three.
I think
Yeah.
what you see is that, I know you could possibly say I'm being a little bit presumptuous here. I think that if we get through this season and win the title, you might see the manager tinker with the formation up top a little bit.
I think he has to.
Yeah,
I think he has to.
I think
Especially if you don't sign a left winger. I think so much of the future of Arsenal depends on if you sign a left winger or not.